I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today I'm looking at weaponizing water, and this is part of an ongoing series looking at federal agencies, in this case the FDA, and asking, what is it good for? This was instigated by a post by Pauline Stonebrook from Diva Drops that she called, "It's called Smart Water. It's loaded with graphene. Smart Water is a Coke product." In that, she links a Twitter video from 2 years ago in which the person uses Smart Water and makes the graphene visible through some method I'm not certain about, and then uses a magnet to show how much is in it. She writes, "How long has this been going on? A very long time. I went back into my Poison archives to find this video from 2 years ago. The other links I saved have been scrubbed. It began in the 70s. Coke, Pepsi, and Nestle were some of the first to add graphene oxide to their products. Nano Domestic Quell Project, Snowden talked about it in 2013. I wrote in a comment to Pauline that a month back the husband of my raw milk dairy was so sick he almost died. So she is so adamantly anti-vax that she left the farmer's market over an altercation where an irate pro-vaxxer attacked them, and the farmer's market didn't defend them and said it was their own fault because of being against the vaccine. So for a year and a half, she distributed out of my driveway in what became the unmasked underground. So it was people who were sharing information and even a COVID care kit that got passed around. When he got so sick, they didn't want to go near a hospital, and so she sent a hair sample to a lab to have it analyzed. What it came back with was showing that he had 35,000 times the amount of graphene in his hair than should be there, which is 0. So she did mention that, trying to figure this out, that he drank a lot of bottled seltzer water, and I think Pellegrino was the brand. Sadly, this week, he took his life. And I sent my condolences, but I haven't talked to her since. So I don't know whether that was continuing physical symptoms, or whether it was psychological, or whether it was financial, because I've had a draft of an episode called The War on Small to show how small producers are being attacked, especially food producers. I've seen it in supply chain interruptions where first you can't get bottles, then you can't get lids, then you can't get the right kind of lids, then prices have gone up exponentially for this kind of packaging. And then I've seen it also with energy costs. So that has hit people hard who are doing things like running dairies. And then, of course, customers have gone away because people are getting things delivered, and so you may not get your bottles back because they don't want to go near a store in order to return them. So there have been one thing after the other that have hit this couple who have been trying to survive with this dairy. So when I read this post, the graphene connection really struck me. And also, I remember talking with Ginger Bregan and all her family, Peter and her mother, getting so sick at the same time, and looking at whether it could be the water filtration as a form of targeted attack. So that's something that I was really interested in, and I flew to San Diego yesterday, hence the little Art Deco background here, and I got Gold Peak green tea in the airport store, and I noticed that on that it's made by Coca-Cola, and filtered water is the first ingredient and sugar is the second. And then on the plane, when I asked for water, they gave me a can of Deja Blue, which again is purified drinking water, and it's made by Dr. Pepper and 7-Up. So I will be disposing of those and sticking with tap water as the least of the worst options. Then I did a search on, is graphene used to filter water? And I came up with Science Alert, who wrote, what is graphene? They say, every atom of carbon in a graphene sheet is tightly bound to 3 other atoms at identical angles, forming a flat honeycomb-like structure, similar to diamond, which is a 3-dimensional carbon crystal where every atom is connected to 4 neighbors. These strong bonds lend the structure significant robustness. Specifically, graphene has incredible tensile strength, especially on a small scale. This means that compared to a thin string of crystallized steel just a few micrometers across, graphene is more than 6 times harder to rip apart. Tests with other, less ideal forms of steel have previously suggested it could be hundreds of times stronger. In another article, Science Alert writes on wrinkled graphene nanoparticles to filter water. They say, graphene continues to dazzle us with its strength and its versatility. Exciting new applications are being discovered for it all the time. And now scientists have found a way of manipulating the wonder material so it can better filter impurities out of water. The 2-dimensional material comprised of carbon atoms has been studied as a way of cleaning up water before, but the new method could offer the most promising approach yet. It's all down to the exploitation of what are known as van der Waals gaps, the tiny spaces that appear between 2-dimensional nanomaterials when they're layered on top of each other. These nanochannels can be used in a variety of ways, which scientists are now exploring, but the thinness of graphene causes a problem for filtration. Liquid has to spend much of its time traveling along the horizontal plane rather than the vertical one, which would be much quicker. To solve this problem, the team behind the new study used an elastic substrata to scrunch up the graphene layer into a microscopic series of peaks and valleys. That means liquid can scoot down the side of a peak vertically rather than trekking across the open plains horizontally, all at the nanoscale, of course. When you start wrinkling the graphene, you're tilting the sheets and the channels out of plane, says material scientist Muchun Lee from MIT. If you wrinkle it a lot, the channels end up being aligned almost vertically. To finish the effect, the graphene and substrata are fixed in an epoxy substance before the tops of the peaks and the bottoms of the valley are trimmed off. It gives liquid a quicker route through the graphene while still enabling filtration to happen. And then thanks to Le Berger de Photons from the Bregan Substack, who told me about Max Egan on the Crow House. Crows, of course, own my backyard with me just as the groundskeeper, and I share them as my totem creature with Russell Brand. That led me to this link on nanotechnology used in over 2,000 food items from Facts Matter by Roman Balmakov. Although Roman doesn't specifically look at graphene, he looks at the nanoparticles of other food additives. He quotes Georgios Pyrgiotakis saying they may pass through the lining of the gut and enter the bloodstream, which may trigger an inflammatory or immune response. They may also build up in various parts of the body, including the lungs, the heart, and the reproductive organs. Dr. Rolf Halden of Arizona State University states, asbestos itself is relatively benign, comparing the two. It's an inorganic material. What makes it toxic and makes it kill 90,000 people a year is that it has particles that lodge in human tissue. So Roman points out that the FDA has a loophole called GRAS, generally recognized as safe. As long as the large form of any additive is as good as GRAS, the nanoparticle is not subjected to testing. To summarize, graphene is anywhere from 6 to hundreds of times stronger than steel and that much harder to rip apart. It's two-dimensional at the atomic level of the nanoparticle, yet water companies are attaching it to elastic, scrunchy substratus, wrinkling it, embedding it in epoxy, and then shaving off the peaks and the valleys. That seems to me like putting asbestos into your blender and then using that to filter your water. It's taking something that's more stable than steel when it's undisturbed, but cutting it into little shreds so small they'll pass through the gut lining and maybe the blood-brain barrier. What could go wrong? So that question leads me to ask, is this part of the depopulation agenda, or simply to speed up the filtration process for faster profits after putting the pollution there in the first place, so it's the same old damage, solution, 1-2 punch with the sequel of the damage control from the solution? This technology is also being used for desalination, which may explain why that eats through the pipes. And in a removed link, it was adapted from the U.S. military who were running out of water to wash chemical and biological weapons off of their tanks. So instead, let's put the bioweapon right into the water. That's efficiency. To follow up on this, because we need some frickin' hope, I'm going to suggest Love and the Great Resist, and also to show why we need hope, the Reset's 3 agendas. And you can find all of these links and great comments on Third Paradigm at Substack. Thank you for watching.